Send a notice out to everybody. Oop. Alrighty. Check. All right, we are live. Good to see everybody. So we're going to get started right now. Hare Krishna. All right. So, let's see. Okay, so we'll chant a little bit.
Krishna
Haribol, 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 Jaya Jaya, Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya, Prabhupada, 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 Jai Om, Vishnupad, Paramahamsa Parvatacharya, Alsutela Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Charanana Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadha, Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopakapanath Swayam Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Ki Jai, Mathuradam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamunamai Ki Jai, Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nama Om Vishnupadaya, Krishna Pristaya Budle, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini, Namani Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pracharani, Nivashesha Shunyavadi, Paschatcha, Deja Tarane. So, Om Ganat Timiranda Shakadanjana Shalakya Chakshur Meditam. Yena Tasmai Shigurveda Maha, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my divine spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, we're going to continue with our study of the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. We may end a little earlier tonight since I have to get ready to travel early tomorrow morning. We're going to have our class tomorrow, don't worry. I am going to Philadelphia tomorrow by Krishna's grace. And the next day we're going to New York for the Rath Yatra by Krishna's grace. And then back here on Sunday evening. But we will have, by Krishna's grace, the class every evening. As I travel, I bring some of my equipment with me. Okay, so let us continue with the Sri Caitanya Caritamrta. And if you remember, we have just heard about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaching pure devotional service to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And as we talked about last night, that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was ecstatic that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had achieved perfection for several different reasons. One reason is that Lord Chaitanya is God, and he's hankering for all the living entities, including yourself, myself, and everybody else, to come back to him because he loves us unconditionally. At the present time, we don't love God unconditionally. We have our conditions. But Krishna, God, Lord Chaitanya, loves us unconditionally. That means without conditions, he wants what's best for us. Now you may think that if he wants what's best for us, why doesn't he make this world a pleasant place for us? That's a big question. And it involves something called theodicy, the judgment of God. If God really likes us, why doesn't he make this place pleasant? Well, got news for you. This place could never be a pleasant place because it is adverse to our nature. Our nature is what? Asat Chidananda, eternity, bliss, and knowledge. We are meant to be absorbed by nature because we are part and parcel of Krishna. In our loving relationship with Krishna and with everybody else, And in this material world, it is a relationship of exploitation. Jivasa jiva sajivanam. Which means that one living entity subsists by eating another living entity, or, let's not make it so gross, by using other living entities in some way or other. That's life. And in the spiritual realm, life is meant for just loving exchanges, and nobody has any necessity except loving exchanges. Here, we are subject to the threefold miseries. The threefold miseries are under the jurisdiction of Maya. Maya also means that we are getting mercy, because that mercy is teaching us that this is not our constitutional position. And the example I use oftentimes, and you've heard it a million times before, is that you could make life comfortable for a fish outside of the water, but the fish will still not be happy because it's outside of its constitutional situation, which is in the water. So even if Krishna didn't impose these threefold miseries, miseries from the body-mind, miseries from other living entities, and miseries from the material energy in general on us, we would still be miserable because we'd be separated from our beloved. If you're separated from your beloved, then how can you be happy? Just like people, oftentimes they talk about looking for their better half, searching the whole world for someone to make them whole. And they take that to be a romantic relationship. Well, that is illusion. I got news for you. That's illusion. Because the better half that will make us whole is the relationship with Krishna. And no matter how many better halves we try, and some people try multiple times, then it won't work, because we have to make that relationship with Krishna. Of course, that's not to say that we have relationships or we don't have relationships with other people, but they have to be centered on Krishna. Once they're centered on Krishna, then Vishwa Purna Shukayate, Vishwam Purna Shukayate. This material world even becomes something that is enjoyable for a devotee because it's centered on Krishna. Okay, with that brief introduction, let us go to the Caitanya Caritamrta. And the highest happiness, I forgot this point, the highest happiness a devotee can experience is by bringing someone else to Krishna's lotus feet. You want to experience the highest happiness? That's my hint. That's how you can experience the highest happiness. Okay, so now we will continue and go to the Caitanya Caritamrta. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hold on, I got to adjust one little thing here. All right, give me a sec. Give me a sec. Here we go. All right, adjusted. Thank you. So we're continuing with text 237 of the 6th chapter of the Caitanya Caritamrta. And this is really nectar. Caitanya Charana Bhine Nahi Janayana Bhakti Vinu Shastrarahara Nakare Vyakyana. From that day, so this is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who has been taught about pure devotional service by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya has been very happy that he's achieved pure devotional service, so much so that he took prasadam even without following any of the other secondary rules and regulations. And so this is Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya's liberation. From that day on, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya did not know anything but the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And from that day, he could explain the revealed scriptures only in accordance with the process of devotional service. Now that's very interesting, because we're talking about revealed scriptures. Let's see what word is used there in the Bengali for revealed scriptures. Yashastra ara na kare yakhyana vinu. All right, bhakti vinu shastra ara na kare yakara vakyana. The explanation was only about bhakti when he was dealing with other scriptures. So let's talk a little bit about epistemology. How do you know what you know? So the Vedic literatures contain the absolute truth. However, the Vedas are so multi-branched, as mentioned in the Mahabharata, Takupadishta, Shutina Vibhina, that you really can't figure out what they're all about. So the great Acharya, Srila Jiva Goswami, in his wonderful exposition about how do you know what you know, which is really interesting, which is the science of knowledge. How do you know what you know, which is contained in his Tattva Sandarbha. He was talking about different sources of knowledge. And then ultimately he whittled it down and, talked about imperfect senses, how they're not really a good source of knowledge, or induction's not a really good source of knowledge. And he says ultimately the only thing is Shabda Pramana, hearing from authority and hearing from the Vedic literatures, and ultimately he whittled it down to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is called the Paramahansa Sanghita. Paramahansa basically means topmost swan. That's an interesting expression in India. Topmost swan. What does it mean, topmost swan? Well, a swan is considered a very beautiful animal, and actually it's an animal that can take its food from a dirty place, take clean food from a dirty place. So a swan-like person is a person who can go in, because he's aseptic and antiseptic, to even a place that's contaminated and change the place or change the people in that place and understand and ascertain the ultimate goal of human life. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, considered the Paramahansa Samhita, is meant for those people who are on the topmost position of life, those who are able to ascertain the ultimate goal of life. And it's our ultimate source of knowledge, which is called epistemology. How do you know what you know? Well, the Bhagavatam says it. Very easy to understand. But in understanding the Bhagavad Gita, or Bhagavatam, you need the help of a guide. And the Bhagavatam talks about spiritual masters. The Bhagavad Gita, of course, says, Tad vidi pranipatena pariprashnena seviya. That if you want to learn the truth, that vidi, if you want to know it, you have to inquire submissively from a bona fide spiritual master in disciplic succession, who will actually reveal the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita to you. And then part of that is rendering service, having a service attitude, which means a loving attitude. Yesterday we talked about that word, surrender, and it's so threatening. Surrender. No, what we mean is Shraddha. Wow, that's an interesting word, which is oftentimes translated as faith, but means more than that. Da means to go or to give. Shrak or shrak means to the heart. It means like giving your heart. So when we're talking about Sharanagati, which is actually the fancy word for surrender, means to go and give one's heart. This is like Shraddha. And when you give your heart to Krishna, manmana bhavamad bhakto Madhya Shimam Namaskuru. As Krishna says, just think of me, become my devotee, thus you will come to me. So when you give your heart, that's called faith. And faith, anyway, I think you get the idea, and that's surrender too. So let's not use the word surrender so much with Western people because it freaks them out. But that's what we mean, and that's what Prabhupada meant. Not surrender like little boys would tease other little boys and twist their arms behind their backs and say, uncle, surrender. Or someone would put a gun to your head and say, give me your money, surrender. That's not what we're talking about here. The surrender in Krishna consciousness is done voluntarily from the heart, the mind, the body, and the words. The mind here means the heart. Gopinathacharya Tanra Vaishnavata Dekiya Hori Hori Balinache Hati Talidiya. Seeing that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was firmly fixed in the cult of Vaishnavism, Gopinathacharya, his brother-in-law, began to dance, clap his hands, and chant, Huri! Huri! That is ecstatic. Okay. Aradina Bhattacharya Haila Darashane Jagannatha Degi Haila Prabhustane. The next day, the Bhattacharya went to visit the temple of Lord Jagannath, but before he reached the temple, he went to see Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Dandapatkari Kaila Bahu Vidastuti Dainyakari Kai Nija Purva Durmati. When he met Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhattacharya fell down flat to offer him respects. That's called a danda bhat. Danda bhat means like a stick. After offering, because it indicates you're offering yourself in love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why we offer obeisances in the temple, and to the Guru and to everybody. It's a loving exchange of humility. It says in the Bible, the meek shall inherit the earth. So, Chunadapi Sunichena, Toroyavasi Shuna, Manila Manatena Kirtaniya said Hari. One has to be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige. In such a state of mind, one can offer respects, or should offer respects to everyone, and he can chant the holy names constantly. After offering various prayers to him, he spoke of his previous bad disposition with, great humility. There's that word, humility, dainu. Bhakti sadhana shreshta sunite hailamana prabhupadesha kaila nama sankirtan. Then the Bhattacharya asked Chaitanya Mahaprabhu which item is the most important in the execution of devotional service. The Lord replied that the most important item was the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. There are 9 items to be executed in devotional service. These are enumerated in the following verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Prahlad Maharaj's teachings, 7.5.23. Shravanam Kirtanam Shno Smatanam Patasevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasham Sakyam Matnani Vednam. The Shravanam, of course, means to hear, Kirtanam, chant. Vishnu Smarnam means to remember the Lord, serve the lotus feet. Pada Sevanam. Archanam, to worship the deities. Vandanam, to worship, to offer prayers. Dasham, to become a servant. Sakyam, to become the friend of the Lord. And Atma Nivedanam. That means surrender everything. Oh my God. There's that word, surrender again. Atma can refer to the body, the mind, the soul, everything you have. Nivedanam. Hearing the glories of the Lord. Sorry about that heavy word. But it means giving your heart. Think of it, loving relationship. Hearing of the glories of the Lord, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering worship in the temple, offering prayers, becoming a servant of the Lord, becoming the Lord's friend, and sarvatma, nivedana, offering oneself fully at the lotus feet of the Lord. These are the 9 devotional processes. Now another question some of you may ask, why do you have all these feet stuff? All this feet stuff. Lotus feet, Offer obeisances at your lotus feet, Krishna's lotus feet, because that's humility. It's part of the culture. It's humility. In the Nectar of Devotion, these are expanded into 64 items. When Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya asked the Lord which item was most important, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu immediately answered that the most important item is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. I guess you don't know what this is. Hari Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. He then quoted the following verse from the Brihan Naradiya Purana 38:126 to confirm his statement, and I think everyone is familiar with this verse, which is also cited in the Adi Lila 17:21. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nashteva, 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 Gatir Anyata. And this is very easy to translate. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, wow, don't they have that right? Quarrel and hypocrisy. What does hypocrisy mean? That you say one thing and you do another thing. You're a hypocrite. Just like there was a president of the United States who told people not to take the vaccine, but he took the vaccine. He was an anti-vaxxer who took the vaccine. The only means of deliverance. Anyway, that's a whole other subject matter about anti-vaxxers. The only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There's no other way. There is no other way. There ain't no other way. Because the people in this age are so fallen, they can simply chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. In this way, they can rid themselves of the bodily conception of life and become eligible to engage in the Lord's devotional service. One cannot engage in the devotional service of the Lord without being purified of all contamination. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter, text 28, another famous verse. Yesham tvandagatam papam yananam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajanti mam tridavrata. Let's take this set. Unto those Twanta Gatam, who've undergone the end of papam. Papam means sinful activities. Gnanam, those people who are executing pious activities, spiritual activities, they're freed. Dvandva moha nirmukta. They're freed from illusion. Wow, dualities of illusion. Yeah. And they can worship Bhajante, they can worship Krishna with firm determination. Let's see how Prabhupada translates. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. Sometimes people are surprised to see young men and women take so seriously to the Krishna conscious movement. By giving up sinful activity, illicit sex, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, and strictly following the injunctions given by the spiritual master, they have become purified of all contamination. They can therefore fully engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Actually, these regulated principles, no illicit sex, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, are called the regulated principles of freedom, because if you follow them, you're not going to be controlled by the grosser, lower nature. And obviously, then Kali, which is the personality of this age, will not be controlling you anymore. In this age of Kali, there's that Kali again. Hari Kirtan is very, very important. The importance of chanting the holy name of the Lord is stated in the following verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 3rd chapter, 51 to 52. And you've heard this verse before, these verses before, several times. I've quoted them, and several times Prabhupada has quoted them in my classes. Kalayardashan he raja nashiko mahadguna kirtana deva krishna sha mukta sangha param vrajat kateya dhyayato vishnum tritayam yajato makahai dwapare paricharyayam. The most important factor in this age of Kali, which is an ocean of faults, is that one can be free from all contamination, become eligible to enter the kingdom of God simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. The self-realization that was achieved in the Satya millennium by meditation, in the Treta millennium by the performance of different sacrifices, in the Dwapara millennium by the worship of Lord Krishna, can be achieved in the age of Kali simply by chanting the holy names Hare Krishna. And until people chant the holy names, the difficulties that we have in this age of Kali will not be overcome. I mean, if you read the news, today I read the news, I have to confess, I read the news. It's actually extremely depressing because of global warming. It turns out that a good percentage of the United States, especially the left coast, that's the west coast, is subjected to extreme drought, and the levels in some of the lakes, like Lake Mead, anyway, some of you don't know what Lake Mead is. It's one of the main lakes there, is at the lowest level in history. Extreme drought. Temperature has been on the average 10 to 12 degrees in certain parts of the United States, higher than the average. Drought conditions, they're simple like that. And then you look at all these countries, let's see, Central America, where people are just like running or walking to the United States thousands of kilometers because their countries are decimated by crime, their countries are decimated by inclement weather, decimated by cheating by the government, and then even on the internet you have so many horrendous activities going on. I mean, it's definitely, Kali is increasing dramatically day by day, year by year. And so people are looking for solutions, but material solutions are not going to work. Like Prabhupada would comment often about the United Nations. Prabhupada had experience previously about what was called the League of Nations. That was the predecessor to the United Nations that was there before World War II. And after World War II, you had the United Nations. So the United Nations is usually, as far as the political sphere is concerned, is a mechanism whereby different countries can oppose other countries. It's not that they're united. So the world ain't in a good state. And what to speak of, I forgot about the coronavirus right now. And of course, that'll pass, but then there'll be some other major disaster. And there's no solution. I mean, we have these material solutions, but because people are so greedy, they won't even take up the material solutions. Like to stop the global warming, you got to reduce your consumption, especially, hate to tell you this, especially of meat. The transportation sector doesn't use much of the Earth's resources compared to the agricultural sector, and most of the agricultural sector is dedicated to producing food to be fed to animals for slaughter. And people are not going to stop doing it. Like if you threaten people's diet, especially in America, they'll kill you. They'll get out their AK-47s and shoot you all. So there's no solution until people have purified minds. When they get purified minds, they chant the holy names, they develop compassion for all living entities, they reduce their consumption of the earth's resources, they reduce the violence that they're committing to others, human beings, to animals. It's the only solution, the purification of the heart. What do you expect? If people's hearts are not purified, then they're in the lower modes of nature. People are eating meat, then they're in the lower modes of nature. If people see others as objects of exploitation, they're in the lower modes of nature. And as a result of that, you can't expect to stop global warming, to stop wars, or stop any of these things simply by some agreement between different people. It just doesn't work. Or stop the drug trade. You know, you could do all these FBI investigations to try to stop the drug trade, but the demand is there because people don't have purified hearts. Just like in the 1920s in the United States, they wanted to stop the consumption of alcohol, all types of alcohol. So they had something called prohibition. What is prohibition? That means it was illegal to have alcohol. You get arrested if they caught you with alcohol. Certainly you couldn't have an ABC store. That means alcoholic beverage control store. Certainly you couldn't have a bar. But what did people do? They started to make alcohol in their homes. They made stills in the bathtub. It's called bathtub gin. In India, that's still going on. And sometimes they made the wrong type of alcohol, and if you drink the wrong type of alcohol, it won't make you intoxicated, but it will blind you, it will kill you. So they weren't able to stop people's activities simply by fiat. Okay. If you don't know what a fiat is, it's not a car. Fiat means a law or a rule. You have to have some purification of heart. You know, why do I follow the four regulated principles? For various reasons. One reason, of course, is I'm not interested. Because my heart, hopefully, has been a little purified after 50 years in the Hare Krishna movement. Another reason is I want to be Krishna conscious. Another reason is I want to please Prabhupada. Another reason is I want to help others, and I understand my heart has to be purified, and I can't do those things with an impure heart. You know, just any solution you take of the world's problems, unless it involves purifying the people, will not work, because the people will remain as greedy as almost used that word. I almost said SOBs. But that's a fact. If you don't purify the heart, people remain SOBs in one way or the other. They'll exploit, they'll accumulate for themselves, they won't have feelings for others. Just like there was a previous governor of the state of Alaska, she was running for vice president of the United States many years ago. And she thought it was wonderful. She would go in a helicopter in Alaska and go hunting for deer from the helicopter with a high-powered telescopic scope rifle, and boom, knock off the deer. And people thought, oh, this is very, very nice hunting. Or like in Great Britain, they would go hunting. They'd have the hounds come and chase fox. Poor little fox, a bunch of creeps on horses with hounds. Hounds means dogs. Sorry. Because they don't have purified hearts. There's no real compassion there. Yeah, there's a sentimental compassion for their own people, their own race, their own gender, their own family. You know, this is a sentiment because it's connected with them. It's selfish. It's called skin disease. So without purification of the heart, there's no chance of any sort of agreement making any substantial difference. Notice I use the word substantial. You know, why do you still have racism? Because people's hearts are not purified. It's as simple as that. Sexism, racism. Why are people chauvinists? Because people's hearts are not purified. They can't see things from the other person's perspective. You know, it's horrendous. And sometimes you find people chanting Hare Krishna who have not purify their hearts. Why? Because they're not chanting properly. They're not chanting without offense. Because you can chant in the mode of passion, you can chant in the mode of... You can do devotional service in the three modes of nature. You should do devotional service transcendently. Anyway, so much for that. Let's go ahead. I was on my soapbox tonight. Eish lokerarta shunai lakarira vishtara shuni bhattacharya mane haila chamatkara. So the only solution is chanting. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu very elaborately explained the Harinama verse of the Brihad Nadidiya Purana. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was struck with wonder to hear his explanation. Thunderstruck. Gopinathacharya Bale Ami Purveye Kahila Shuna Bhattacharya Tomara Seta Haila. Gopinathacharya reminded Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, my dear Bhattacharya, what I foretold to you has now taken place. So that's a fancy way of saying, I told you so, buddy. Because Gopinathacharya was telling Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that he would be convinced later on. And he was the brother-in-law, so they could have these joking relationships. So sometimes, if you find out you're right, you'll go to the person who is disagreeing with you about something and say, I told you so. This is really a fancy way of saying that. Previously, Gopinathacharya had informed Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that when he would be blessed by the Lord, he would thoroughly understand the transcendental process of devotional service. This prediction was now fulfilled. The Bhattacharya was fully converted to the cult of Vaishnavism, and he was following the principles automatically without being pressured. In the Bhagavad Gita 2:40, it is therefore said, Swapam apyasha dharmasha trayate matobayat. Simply by performing a little devotional service, one can escape the greatest danger. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had been in the greatest danger because he had adhered to the Mayavadi philosophy. Somehow or other, he came in contact with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and became a perfect devotee. In this way, he was saved from the great fall down of impersonalism. Wow. Excuse me for a second. Just want to take a drink. Don't worry, it's water. I do not drink anything else other than good old H2O. Bhattacharya kahi tanre kare namaskare tomara sambande prabhu kripa kaila more. Offering his obeisances to Gopinathacharya, the Bhattacharya said, because I am related to you and you are a devotee, by your mercy, the Lord has shown mercy to me. That's true. If you're related to someone who's a devotee, you got it made. What about not related to someone who's a devotee? Then, make a spiritual relationship. Make initiation. Tumi maha bhagavata ami tarikande Prabhu Kripa Kaila More Tamara Sambante. You are a first-class devotee, whereas I'm in the darkness of logical arguments because of your relationship with the Lord. The Lord has bestowed his benediction upon me. Vinaya Shuni Tushje Prabhu Kaila Halingana Kaila Yanakaraha Ishvara Darashana. After Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased with this humble statement. After embracing the Bhattacharya, he said, now go see Lord Jagannath in the temple. Jagadananda Damadara Dvi Sangilana Gariyaila Bhattacharya Jagannatha Dekhiya. After visiting the temple of Lord Jagannath, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya returned home with Jagadananda and Damodar. Uttama Prasada Bahuta Hanila Nija Viprahati Dvi Jana Sange Dila. The Bhattacharya brought large quantities of excellent food, remnants blessed by Lord Jagannath. All this prasadam was given to his own Brahmana servant along with Jagadananda Damodar. Nija Krita Dvi Shloka Vikiya Tale Pate Prabhu ke diha bali dila Jagadananda hate. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya then composed 2 verses on the leaf of a palm tree. These verses are very important. Giving the palm leaf to Jagadananda Prabhu, the Bhattacharya requested him to deliver it to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very important verses. Prabhu Stanayala Dunhe Prasada Patri Nana Mukunda Datta Patri Nila Tara Hate Pana. Jagadananda and Damodara then returned to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, bringing him both the prasadam and the palm leaf on which the verses were composed. But Mukunda Dat took the palm leaf from the hands of Jagadananda before he could deliver it to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Why did he take it? You're going to hear, because he copied it. Dvishlaka Bahira Vite Ligiyavra Kila Tavi Jagadananda Patri Prabhuke Lanadila. Mukunda Dat then copied the 2 verses on the wall outside the room. After this, Jagadananda took the palm leaf from Mukunda Dat and delivered it to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhu Shloka Padi Patra Chindya Lila Vite Deki Bhakta Shaba Shloka Kante Kaila. As soon as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu read the 2 verses, he immediately tore up the palm leaf. However, all the devotees read these verses on the outside wall, and they all kept them within their hearts. The verses read as follows, really important verses, which I've memorized. Vairagya Vijjani Jivakti Yoga Shiksharteka Purusha Purana Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dari Kripambudi Yastamaham Prapaje. Let me take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who has descended in the form of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach us real knowledge, his devotional service, and detachment from whatever does not foster Krishna consciousness. He has descended because he is an ocean of transcendental mercy. Let me surrender unto his lotus feet. This verse and the following verse are included in the Chaitanya Chandrodaya Nataka by Sri Kavi Karna Kapoor. Very important verse. Kalan Nashtam Bhakti Yogam Nijamya Pradushkardam Krishna Chaitanya Nama Vibhutastasya Vadaravinde Gadam Gadam Liyatam Chitta Bringaha. Let my consciousness, which is like a honeybee, take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has just now appeared as Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to teach the ancient system of devotional service to himself. This system had almost been lost due to the influence of time. So as Lord Krishna states in the Bhagavad Gita, you remember the Bhagavad Gita, 4:7, Yada yada hi dharmasha glanir bhavati bharata bhutanam dharmasha tadatmanam shujam yaham. Whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, the predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. This is also the case with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in this world as a disguised incarnation of Krishna, but his appearance is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam, the Mahabharata, and other Vedic scriptures. He appeared in order to teach the fallen souls in this material world, for in this age of Kali, almost everyone has become attached to fruitive and ritualistic activities and mental speculation. Consequently, there was a great need to revive the system of devotional service. The Lord himself personally came down disguised as a devotee so that fallen populace might take advantage of the Lord's example. At the conclusion of the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna advised complete surrender unto him, promising, there's that word surrender, promising all protection to his devotee. Unfortunately, people are so fallen that they cannot accept the instructions of Lord Krishna. Therefore, Krishna returned with the same mission, but he executed it in a different way. As Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he ordered us to surrender unto himself, but as Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he taught us how to surrender to Krishna. Therefore, he is praised by the Goswamis, Namo Mahadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate. In other words, I offer my obeisances unto the greatest merciful personality who is giving us Krishna Prema freely. Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tashe Namaha. Lord Sri Krishna is certainly the personality of God, but he is not as magnanimous as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Krishna simply gave orders for one to become his devotee, Manmana Bhavamad Bhaktaha. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually taught the process of Krishna consciousness If one wants to become a devotee of Krishna, he must first take shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, following the footsteps of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and other devotees, exalted devotees. So there's that imperative word, must. It's imperative. Okay, so we went up to 256, and we started today at 237. So we'll continue tomorrow from this point. Let's, actually went up to 255, sorry. 255, 256 tomorrow. Okay, so let us take some questions, and we'll allow you to unmute yourselves. We're going to make the question session hopefully a little short today because I got to travel early tomorrow morning. Okay, who wants to ask a question? Well, that's very short. Nobody wants to ask a question. Great. Oh, here's a question. Is it not naive on our part to expect 100% of the population to be God conscious? Because according to time, chakra is natural for Kali Yuga, and the symptoms occur before the next cycle starts. That is a very good question, Atmanandini. We do not expect 100% of the population to be God conscious. However, we do want, and it will be effective, if the leaders are God conscious and advised by people who are God conscious. You know, if the purified leaders like Ram, Lord Ram, or Krishna. Of course, where we're going to find a Krishna or Ram. But, you know, maybe a Yudhisthira or a Prithu Maharaj or Srila Prabhupada. Of course, Srila Prabhupada is not going to be a president or something like that. But anyway, so we need purified leaders. People who inspire others. And those purified leaders, let's give the example, okay, of King Virahambira. Okay, here's a good example. King Virahambira was the leader of a particular state in India or province called Virahambira was Vishnupura, Vana Vishnupura. That was his state. Okay. So, what happened is that he was a rascal before. He was the head of all the dacoits, and just like a modern-day president, prime minister, dictator, king, whatever you call it nowadays, he was really bad. Bad news. So, in fact, he was such a good rascal that he employed astrologers to find out where to rob or who to rob from. So, then once upon a time, some devotees came through his province carrying the books. That was Srinivasacharya, Shyamananda, Narottam Thakur. They came through, and they were carrying this treasure of the Goswami's literatures with them. So his astrologers told him that there were treasures coming to the kingdom, and they should steal them. And so he sent his men out, and they stole this box of books. He opened the box of books, and just by touching the books and seeing the handwriting of Srila Rupa Goswami and the other Goswamis, he became partially purified. Later on, Srinivasacharya came, gave him some Bhagavatam class explanations about the books, recovered the books, of course, because they are the original books of the Goswamis, which there were very few copies of. So he recovered the books, and the king became his disciple. And then the king made it a rule. How did he make it a rule? What was his rule? That everyone had to chant their rounds and be Krishna conscious in the kingdom. Or else, hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, as the song goes. You know, so the king could do that. And then even later on, or actually earlier, you have the Emperor Ashoka, who was Buddhist. He wasn't Krishna conscious. But he became converted to Buddhism, and he was nonviolent and, very pious and dharmic in that particular sense. And the whole of India became Buddhist at that point. So you see, it takes a leader that inspires others. That's not to force others. A leader actually acts by inspiration. Like Lord Ram, he ruled by inspiration. Everyone loved him because he was surrendered. He was surrendered so much that he was ready to give up his own personal marital situation, and he did, for the sake of his kingdom. I mean, where do you find such a surrendered soul nowadays? Nowadays, the kings, prime ministers, whatever, they're making money from their particular situation for their family members. I'm not going to comment about the past president of the United States who did that very same thing. I guess I just did comment about him. So anyway, I won't. No details, even though it's very tempting for me to get into the whole situation. So, so anyway, I mean, it's whatever. You need a leader who has no personal interest, who's simply te- teaching the citizens and treating the citizens like his own children, like a loving father. And the queen, of course, a loving Mataji, a loving mommy. So anyway, so you need people like that, and then the citizens, they love them. So things are done by love if you have leaders. So we're not expecting, yes, every single devotee, every single person in the world is going to pick up their little bead bag and start chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. We expect purified leaders, which means a few people. I mean, I think if 5% of the people would take up Krishna consciousness in one form, the whole world would change. But people have to take it up seriously. Because we find even in our or around our Krishna conscious movement, where people don't really understand the essence of Krishna consciousness or take it seriously, there may be some conflicts. People are not really understanding the principles of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes they take the little details as extremely important. Details such as, what is your hairstyle? How do you wear your dhoti? How do you dance in kirtan? These are things that, who that anyway cares? Whether you dance the Prabhupada step, or whether you dance the Jigaloo during kirtan, or you dance the hokey pokey during kirtan. Just as long as you chant the holy names. I mean, or whether you play a guitar during kirtan, or whether you play the trumpet during kirtan, or whether you play the kazoo during kirtan, or whether you play the mridanga or cartels, you could fight about that. It's like they used to talk about how many Christians would fight at how many angels you could put on the head of a pin. That was pretty ridiculous. Okay, here's a question from Rishikesh. How can a devotee following Vaidhi come to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti? First, follow Vaidhi Bhakti very strongly, strictly, and then you associate with those who are on a higher platform. Like you read Prabhupada's books, you pray to the deities, you render service, and I think even more important, as I pointed out, is that we try to bring others to Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna in the Gita says, no one is more dear to me than that person, he or she, who preaches this Bhagavad Gita or teaches this Bhagavad Gita to others. And there will never be anyone more dear to me than he or she who does that. So that's a secret. Secret. You share, you give, and you get. The more you give, the more you get. Be charitable. Especially those born in the land of Bharat-Varsha, which is, I guess, all of us, because the earth is Bharat-Varsha. India is Bharat-Varsha in one sense, but also the earth is one Bharat-Varsha. Okay, just one final question, because we wanted to end it from Jai Radhika. What's your question?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So my question is like I find it amazing how people follow half the logic when there's a information easily out there, it's obtainable. So I have like three examples. So like we've seen like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya has presented Sharira Bhashya from Shankaracharya's Mayavadi philosophy and refuted and got defeated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But still we have Mayavadis out there that they like to follow this philosophy. And we have like, you know, people that grew up with Bhagavad Gita and they still follow the only 6 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, like karma yoga. And we have and the other one, like, you know, I had a letter from you in previous classes like about Pushti Marga people, you know, they only follow Vallabha, not like how Vallabhacharya pastimes, and you know, understanding Gadada Pandit and how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu loves him and the whole thing. They don't accept Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when it's easily out there. Where if you love something, you can easily go out there, find everything all about it. So I was thinking, is it because, like, how do we understand? Is it because they are covered by the illusory potency of Maya and because of their past misdeeds? Or like, and also we read one of the shlokas, I think 181, it was like Lord Shiva talking about like there are some people that we still want some people to like be devoid of spiritual advancement and, you know, advance in materialistic lifestyle. So is it that too?
That's a complicated. You asked a very long question, and I'm going to try
Yeah,
to
sorry
answer
about that.
quickly at least part of your question.
Yeah.
Um, Generally, I understand. My understanding is that there's two reasons why people don't see the nose in front of their face. Because this is basically what you're asking for.
Yes, yes.
That, you know, you don't see the nose in front of your face, which means it's obvious. You know,
Mm,
you don't see something that's obvious. You read the Bhagavad Gita and you don't see man mana bhava mad bhakto madhya shimam namaskuru, or in any of these other examples you gave. One reason is because uh, their own desires, and Krishna in the Gita says, Matak Smritir Jnanam Apoanam Cha, in the 15th chapter, text 15 in the Bhagavad Gita. Uh, if someone has a particular type of desire, Krishna gives you the intelligence to perceive things in a particular way. That's really the main reason.
mhm,
Another reason I would ascribe to psychology. Like, one reason that people tend to impersonalism is because of their own experiences in this world.
oh,
Like,
yes.
we experience it. Let's say we've had a number of relationships with different people. We've always
Mhm,
been disappointed, always been hurt, traumatized even. And so we're going to think all these relationships are bad. Everyone's exploiting everyone else. I mean, this is called induction, technically, that we're actually, anuman is the Sanskrit word
mhm,
for it. We're actually coming to a conclusion based upon our perception that all relationships are bad. So spirituality should mean, you know, the goal of spirituality should mean to end all relationships. So I think it would be, Prabhupada mentions this too in one of his purports, that because of frustration in this world, people take to an impersonal understanding
mhm.
of one type or the other. And so then Krishna gives you intelligence uh, to fulfill your particular desires. So that's why people can perceive the same scriptures and come up with different conclusions.
Mhm.
And you know, that even the Christians, they have the saying. I forget exactly how the saying goes. That, you know, you read the Bible day and night. You see black and I see white. You know, something like that.
Mhm.
So and I've seen that amongst devotees when they have different opinions about things that are taking quotes from Prabhupada.
Yeah.
They are proving anything they want. I mean, we have one conflict we have in our movement right now is between the vaxxers and anti-vaxxers. It was interesting,
Yeah.
and uh, and each one has their own quotes from Prabhupada,
Mm.
which is really interesting. And so you can You could pull things out of context in the Vedic literatures to prove anything, but really to understand the proper context, one has to have the mercy of Krishna. Even to exist properly in this world, one has to have the mercy of Krishna. Anyway, I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj.
Yes, Mukh has so at the moment I'm serving the deities in the temple. What will happen one day when I'm serving the deities? I feel that Krishna's hand is like human hands. What to do then? Shake his hand. That's what you should do, Sumukh. If Krishna starts to move and the hands, you feel like, they're just like flesh and blood hands, then just shake his hand and say, hello, I'm Sumukh. How are you? What's your name? And you say, my name is Krishna. Okay, so we'll see everybody tomorrow. All glories to His divine grace.